Picture a misty English village, where a renowned cartographer lies dead in his study, a dagger in his back, his prized globe shattered into pieces. Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective unravelling a web of secrets woven into a hidden map. Was it the ambitious rival, forging maps to steal glory? The wealthy widow, guarding her late husband's dark secrets? Or the nervous servant, hiding more than petty theft? In the shattered globe, every clue is a coordinate, every suspect a shadow, leading to a shocking truth buried in the lines of a mysterious chart. Will Poirot's little grey cells uncover the killer before the trail vanishes? Dive into this Agatha Christie-style mystery of betrayal, ambition, and a treasure lost to the sea. Chapter 1. The Mapmaker's End. The village of St. Aldwyn's lay cradled in the gentle folds of Kent's emerald hills, its cobblestone lanes and ivy-clad cottages bathed in the golden haze of an October dusk. The air carried the crisp bite of autumn, mingling with the faint perfume of wood smoke and damp earth. At the heart of the village stood the Georgian manor of Mr. Bartholomew Cresswell, a cartographer whose maps were prized by scholars and explorers alike. His study, a sanctuary of order and precision, was a world unto itself, walls lined with meticulously drawn charts, their inked lines tracing continents and oceans with an almost reverent care. Shelves groaned under the weight of leather-bound atlases, and a great oak desk bore the tools of his trade: quills, compasses, and vials of ink arranged with military exactitude. On this particular evening, however, the study was a scene of violent disarray. Hercule Poirot, summoned by an urgent telegram from his old friend, Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, stood poised in the doorway, his small, fastidious frame silhouetted against the flickering light of a gas lamp. His patent leather shoes gleamed, untouched by the dust of the journey from London, and his moustache, perfectly symmetrical, quivered slightly as he absorbed the grim spectacle before him. Bartholomew Cresswell lay slumped across his desk, his lifeless hand still clutching a quill, its nib stained with ink that had pooled like dark blood on the blotter. A dagger, its handle carved with intricate nautical motifs, protruded from his back, the blade buried deep between his shoulder blades. The lamplight caught the steel, casting a cold glint across the room. Most striking, however, was the wreckage of a magnificent globe that had once dominated the study's centre. Its surface, a masterpiece of cartographic art, was now a chaos of splintered wood and torn parchment, scattered across the Persian rug like the remnants of a shattered world. Inspector Japp, his ruddy face creased with unease, stood beside the body, his bowler hat clutched in one hand. "A devil of a mess, Poirot," he said, his voice rough with the strain of the morning's discovery. "The maid found him at dawn, just as you see him. Now, no sign of a break-in, no windows forced, but this globe, smashed to smithereens, looks like someone had a right go at it, doesn't it?" Poirot stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his eyes darting over the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. He paused by the desk, noting the faint scent of varnish that lingered in the air, a testament to Cresswell's recent labours. "Mon ami," he said softly, his Belgian accent lending a musical cadence to his words. "This is no mere act of vandalism. The globe, it is not simply broken. It is a message. But whether it speaks of rage, of fear, or of concealment, that is what we must discover." He knelt beside the fragments of the globe, his gloved fingers brushing lightly over a jagged piece depicting the curve of Africa's western coast. The edges were sharp, the breaks uneven, as though struck with sudden, brutal force. Poirot's gaze lingered on a faint smudge of red ink, barely visible against the parchment's ochre hue. "Curieux," he murmured, his eyes narrowing. "This mark, it is not part of the globe's design. It is an addition, an accident, perhaps, or a clue." Japp shifted impatiently. "A clue? You're saying the killer left us a calling card in this mess?" Poirot rose, his expression serene, but his mind clearly racing. "Not a calling card, Inspector, but a whisper of intent. The globe was a work of art, a symbol of Monsieur Cresswell's genius. To destroy it was to strike at his very soul. We must ask ourselves, who would wish to shatter not only a man, but his legacy?" He turned his attention to the desk, where a half-unrolled map lay beneath Cresswell's lifeless arm. The map depicted a cluster of islands in the Pacific, their outlines traced with a haste that seemed at odds with the cartographer's reputation for meticulousness. Poirot's fingers hovered over the parchment, noting the uneven strokes of the pen, the slight tremor in the lines. "This map," he said, almost to himself. "It is not finished. And yet, it is significant. Why did he work on it last night, I wonder?" Japp coughed, drawing Poirot's attention. "We've got 3 likely suspects so far," he said, consulting a small notebook. "Lionel Drake, a rival cartographer, bit of a chip on his shoulder by all accounts. Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt, a rich widow who was one of Cresswell's top clients. And Thomas Reed, the servant who found the body. All of them were in or near the manor last night, according to the locals." Poirot nodded, his grey eyes gleaming with that peculiar light that signalled the awakening of his little grey cells. "Very good, Inspector. We shall speak with them all. But first, let us understand the man himself. Monsieur Cresswell was a cartographer, a man who charted the world's truths. His death, it is a map of its own, a map we must now navigate." As Japp called for the constable to secure the room, Poirot lingered, his gaze returning to the shattered globe. In its ruins, he sensed a story waiting to be told, a story of ambition, betrayal, and secrets hidden in the lines of a map. With a final glance at the silent figure of Bartholomew Cresswell, Poirot straightened his tie and stepped into the cool October air, ready to unravel the mystery of the mapmaker's end. Chapter 2. The Cast of Suspicion. The morning sun filtered through the leaded windows of Bartholomew Cresswell's Georgian manor, casting a lattice of light across the drawing-room where Hercule Poirot had assembled the household. The room, with its polished mahogany furniture and heavy velvet drapes, exuded an air of restrained elegance, yet the atmosphere was taut with unease. The scent of beeswax polish mingled with the faint mustiness of old books, a reminder of the manor's scholarly occupant, now forever silenced. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his small, dapper figure commanding the room despite his unassuming stature. His patent leather shoes gleamed, and his moustache, meticulously groomed, seemed to quiver with anticipation as he surveyed the 3 figures seated before him. Inspector Japp, his broad shoulders slightly hunched, stood near the door, his notebook open and his pencil poised. His presence, though authoritative, was overshadowed by Poirot's quiet intensity. The inspector's ruddy face bore the strain of a case that promised complexity, and he glanced at Poirot with a mixture of exasperation and trust. "Right, Poirot," he said under his breath. Let's see what your little grey cells make of this lot." Poirot's eyes, sharp and grey as polished steel, moved slowly from one suspect to another, each a distinct study in demeanour and motive. He had insisted on this gathering, believing that the first impressions of those closest to a crime often revealed truths their words sought to conceal. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his Belgian accent lending a musical cadence to his words, "the tragedy of Monsieur Cresswell's death has brought us together. A man of maps, of precision, has been struck down in his own study, and with him a globe of great beauty has been shattered. We are here to uncover not only who committed this act, but why. Let us proceed with order and method." The first to speak was Lionel Drake, a fellow cartographer whose rivalry with Cresswell was the talk of St. Aldwyn's scholarly circles. He sat rigidly in a high-backed chair, his lean frame clad in a tweed suit that seemed a size too large, as though he sought to diminish his presence. His face, angular and pale, bore the marks of sleepless nights, with dark shadows under his eyes and a nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth. His fingers, stained faintly with ink, drummed a restless rhythm on the armrest. "I know what you're thinking," Drake said, his voice sharp and defensive. "Bartholomew and I were competitors, yes, but murder? That's absurd. I had no reason to wish him dead." Poirot tilted his head, his expression inscrutable. "Monsieur Drake, rivalry is a powerful force, n'est-ce pas? It can drive men to great deeds, or to desperate ones. You and Monsieur Cresswell, you vied for the favour of the Royal Geographical Society. Did you not?" Drake's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward, his eyes flashing. "We did. Bartholomew had a knack for charming patrons, securing commissions I could only dream of. His maps were flawless, I'll grant him that. But he hoarded opportunities, left little room for others. Still, I built my own reputation. I didn't need to kill him to prove my worth." Poirot's gaze lingered on Drake's hands, noting the calluses on his fingers, the telltale signs of a man who spent hours hunched over drafting tables. "And yet," Poirot said softly, "you were seen near the manor last night, late, when most of the village slept. The milkman, a reliable witness, confirms this. What brought you to Monsieur Cresswell's door at such an hour?" Drake's face flushed, and he hesitated, his fingers stilling. I went to propose a collaboration, a joint project on a new atlas of the South Seas. Bartholomew had resources I lacked, access to rare charts, connections with explorers. I thought we could combine our skills. He refused, as he always did. Said my work was inferior. I left him alive, I swear it." Poirot nodded, his expression giving nothing away. "We shall verify, Monsieur Drake. The truth, it has a way of revealing itself, like a map unrolled in the light." Next was Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt, a widow whose wealth and poise made her a formidable presence in the room. She sat on a brocade sofa, her posture erect, her mourning attire of black silk impeccable yet understated. Her face, framed by a lace veil, was strikingly handsome, with high cheekbones and eyes of a piercing blue that seemed to see through rather than at her interlocutors. A diamond brooch at her throat caught the sunlight, a subtle reminder of her status. Her hands, gloved in kid leather, rested calmly in her lap, but Poirot noted a faint tremor as she reached for a handkerchief. "Madame Harcourt," Poirot said, his tone courteous but probing. "You were a client of Monsieur Cresswell, one of his most valued, I understand. He was crafting a map of your late husband's estates, was he not?" Mrs. Harcourt inclined her head, her voice cool and measured. Indeed. My husband, Sir Reginald, left me considerable properties. Estates in Cornwall, Yorkshire, and abroad. I commissioned Bartholomew to create detailed maps for their valuation and sale. His skill was unmatched, but he was exasperatingly slow. He promised delivery last week, yet kept delaying, citing complications. I grew impatient, I confess. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. Impatience, madame, can be a dangerous thing. Did these complications perhaps involve discoveries in the maps? Something, perhaps, that you wished to remain hidden? Her lips parted in a faint gasp, quickly masked by a tight smile. Monsieur Poirot, I am a widow managing a vast inheritance. My only concern was accuracy, not secrecy. Bartholomew's delays were inconvenient, nothing more. Poirot observed the slight tightening of her gloves, the way her eyes darted briefly to the side. Inconvenient, he repeated softly. Yet inconvenience can breed motive, madame. We shall see what the maps reveal. The final figure was Thomas Reed, the young servant who had discovered Cresswell's body. He perched on the edge of a chair, his lanky frame hunched as though wishing to disappear into the upholstery. His face, boyish and freckled, was pale, and his hands twisted nervously in his lap. His livery, though clean, was slightly askew, and his boots bore faint traces of mud, suggesting a recent errand outdoors. His eyes, wide and anxious, darted between Poirot and Japp, as though expecting accusation at any moment. Monsieur Reed, Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm, you were the first to find your master this morning. Tell me, what did you see when you entered the study? Reed swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I went in at dawn, sir, to light the fire and tidy up, like always. The master was there, slumped over his desk, with that dagger in his back. The globe was all broken, pieces everywhere. I didn't touch nothing, I swear. Just ran to fetch Mrs. Langley, the housekeeper. Poirot's gaze was steady, almost hypnotic. Nothing, you say? Yet you were alone with the body, if only for a moment. Did you notice anything unusual? Anything that struck you as out of place? Reed's eyes flickered, and he shifted in his seat. It was all a blur, sir. The blood, the globe. It was awful. I didn't stay long enough to notice much. Poirot leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. And yet, Monsieur Reed, your boots, they carry mud from the garden path, do they not? The path that leads to the study's French windows. Were you perhaps outside last night, after your duties were done? Reed's face reddened, and he stammered. I took a walk sometimes, sir, to clear my head. The master worked late, and the house gets stuffy. But I didn't see nothing, I swear. Poirot sat back, his expression serene, but his mind clearly turning over the young man's words. Very well, Monsieur Reed. We shall speak again, I think. Japp, growing restless, cleared his throat. That's the lot of them, Poirot. Drake's got a grudge, Mrs. Harcourt's got money on the line, and Reed's jumpy as a cat. Any of them could have done it. But we've no hard evidence yet. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Evidence, Inspector, is like the lines of a map. It must be followed with care to reveal the destination. Each of these three has a story, and each story has its shadows. We must look to the study, to the globe, to the maps themselves, for they will tell us what words conceal. He turned to the assembled group, his voice calm but commanding. You will remain in St. Aldwyn's, if you please, until this matter is resolved. The death of Monsieur Cresswell is a puzzle, and I, Hercule Poirot, do not rest until every piece is in its place." As the suspects rose, their faces a mixture of indignation, fear, and resignation, Poirot's eyes followed them. Drake's shoulders were stiff with defiance. Mrs. Harcourt's movements were deliberate and controlled, and Reed's hurried exit betrayed his unease. Japp approached, lowering his voice. "What do you make of them, Poirot?" Drake's got the motive, but Mrs. Harcourt's too cool by half, and that lad Reed's hiding something, I'd wager. Poirot nodded, his gaze distant. "They are like points on a map, Inspector, each connected to the crime by lines we cannot yet see. Drake's ambition burns brightly. But is it bright enough to kill? Mrs. Harcourt guards her secrets like a fortress. But what lies within? And young Reed, so nervous, so quick to flee. His fear is not that of an innocent man. We must dig deeper, mon ami." The drawing-room emptied, leaving Poirot and Japp alone. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the trees, their leaves whispering secrets of their own. Poirot's mind, however, was already charting the course ahead, tracing the invisible lines that would lead from a shattered globe to a murderer's heart. Chapter 3. The Art of the Map. The study of Bartholomew Cresswell, bathed in the pale light of a late October morning, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot returned to the scene of the crime. The room, though tidied by the police, retained an air of desecration. The desk, once a shrine to precision, now bore the faint stains of spilled ink, and the shattered remnants of the globe lay gathered in a wooden crate, their intricate details reduced to a jigsaw of ruin. The scent of parchment and varnish lingered, mingling with the sharper tang of disinfectant, a reminder of the violent act that had disrupted this sanctuary of scholarship. Poirot, his small frame impeccable in a tailored suit, moved with the deliberation of a man who saw not just objects, but stories etched in their arrangement. Inspector Japp, trailing behind, adjusted his tie with a grimace. "Back to the scene, eh, Poirot? I've had my men comb through every inch, but we've got precious little to show for it. No fingerprints on the dagger, no signs of a struggle beyond the globe. It's as if the killer vanished into thin air." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint glimmer of amusement in his grey eyes. "Vanished, Inspector? No. The killer has left traces, as all do. They are here, in the details, waiting for the little grey cells to uncover them. Let us begin with method, oui?" He approached the desk, his gloved hands hovering over the array of cartographic tools, a brass compass, its needle gleaming, a set of quills, their tips worn from meticulous use, and a vial of indigo ink, its cap askew. Poirot's gaze settled on a partially unrolled map, its edges curling like the petals of a wilting flower. The map depicted a chain of islands in the South Pacific, their outlines rendered with an uncharacteristic haste that jarred against Cresswell's reputation for flawless draftsmanship. The lines wavered, as though drawn by a hand distracted or pressed for time. "This map," Poirot murmured. "It is not like the others. It lacks the elegance of Monsieur Cresswell's usual work. Why, I wonder, was he so hurried?" Japp peered over his shoulder, squinting at the parchment. "Looks like any other map to me. Islands, oceans. What's so special about it?" Poirot's finger traced a faint annotation in the margin, a series of numbers scrawled in Cresswell's precise hand. 12 degrees south, 165 degrees east. "These coordinates, Inspector, They point to a specific location. But what lies there? A discovery? A secret? We must learn more about this map, for it was on his desk when he died. He turned his attention to the crate of globe fragments, kneeling to examine them with the care of an archaeologist unearthing relics. The globe had been a masterpiece, its surface painted with the world's continents in vibrant hues, each border meticulously inked. Poirot lifted a shard depicting the southern tip of South America, noting the jagged edges where it had been torn from its frame. The force required to shatter this, he said, was considerable. Yet the breaks are not random. See here. He held up another fragment, this one showing the Caribbean. The cracks radiate from a single point, as though struck with a heavy object. This was no accident, Inspector. It was an act of intention. Japp scratched his chin, his brow furrowed. You're saying someone smashed the globe on purpose? To cover something up? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Or to reveal it, mon ami. The globe was not merely a decoration. It was a repository of knowledge. To destroy it was to make a statement, or to heed one. We must consider what it contained that was worth such violence. He rose, dusting his gloves, and surveyed the room anew. The walls, lined with maps of every corner of the globe, seemed to whisper of Cresswell's obsession with charting the unknown. One map, framed in gilt, caught Poirot's eye, a detailed rendering of the Indian Ocean, its islands annotated with tiny, cryptic symbols. He approached it, noting a faint crease where it had been removed and rehung. Curieux, he said softly. This map, it has been disturbed. Perhaps it holds a clue. Japp followed, his impatience evident. You and your clues, Poirot. Can't we just focus on the suspects? Drake's got a motive a mile wide, and that Mrs. Harcourt's hiding something. I'd bet my badge on it. Poirot smiled, a serene curve of his lips. Patience, Inspector. The suspects, they are like stars in the sky. Visible, yes, but their true nature is revealed only through the telescope of evidence. Let us examine this room further. He moved to a bookshelf, its shelves sagging under the weight of tomes on geography, navigation, and exploration. Running a finger along the spines, he paused at a gap where a book seemed missing, the dust outlining its absence. Interesting, he said, peering into the space. Something has been taken, perhaps recently. A journal? A ledger? We must ask the housekeeper if she noticed anything amiss. Japp made a note, muttering, You see things I'd miss in 100 years, Poirot. Poirot's gaze returned to the globe fragments, his mind piecing together a theory. He lifted another shard, this one bearing a faint trace of red ink along the equator, similar to the smudge he had noted the previous day. This ink, he said, holding it to the light. It is not part of the globe's design. It is an addition, perhaps made in haste. Could it mark a location? Or a message? He set the fragment down and turned to the French windows, their panes overlooking the manor's garden. The latch was secure, but Poirot noted a faint scratch on the frame, barely visible. Inspector, he called. Regardez ici. This scratch. It is fresh. Someone may have tested this window, perhaps to enter or to ensure it was locked. Japp frowned, crouching to inspect the mark. Could be nothing, Poirot. Gardeners, servants, they're always about. Perhaps, Poirot conceded, but his tone suggested otherwise. Yet in a murder, nothing is nothing, until proven so. We must speak with the gardener and with Mrs. Langley, the housekeeper. They may have seen something, even if they do not yet know its significance. As Japp scribbled another note, Poirot returned to the desk, his attention drawn to a small brass key tucked beneath a blotting pad. He held it up, its surface catching the light. "And this, Inspector, what does it unlock? A drawer? A box? We must find its counterpart." Japp sighed, his exasperation tempered by respect. "You're building a case out of bits and bobs, Poirot. But I'll have my men search for whatever this key fits." Poirot nodded, slipping the key into his pocket. "The art of the map, Inspector, is to see the whole from its parts. Monsieur Cresswell's study is a map of his murder, and every detail, every scratch, every smudge is a coordinate. We shall follow them to the truth." As they left the study, the autumn wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves. Poirot's mind, however, was already tracing the invisible lines that connected a shattered globe, a hurried map, and a killer's motive. The art of detection, like the art of cartography, required patience, precision, and an unerring eye for what lay hidden in plain sight. Chapter 4. The Rivals, Ambition. The village of St. Aldwyn's, with its thatched roofs and winding lanes, seemed to slumber under the grey veil of an October afternoon. But Hercule Poirot's mind was far from rest. He navigated the cobblestone path to Lionel Drake's modest lodgings, a narrow cottage tucked behind the village inn, its windows dim with the patina of neglect. The air carried the damp chill of impending rain, and Poirot, ever meticulous, adjusted his overcoat to shield his pristine suit from the elements. Inspector Japp had declined to join him, citing a need to oversee the constable's search of a Cresswell's manor, but Poirot preferred to conduct this interview alone, trusting his little grey cells to discern truths that might elude a heavier hand. Drake's cottage was a stark contrast to the opulence of Cresswell's manor. The front door, its paint peeling, creaked as Poirot knocked, and after a moment Lionel Drake appeared, his angular face taut with suspicion. His tweed jacket hung loosely on his frame, and his ink-stained fingers betrayed his trade, though his eyes, sharp and restless, suggested a man haunted by more than professional rivalry. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I expected you'd come sniffing about. What do you want?" Poirot offered a polite smile, his moustache perfectly aligned. "Monsieur Drake, I seek only the truth. May I enter?" "The air. It grows most disagreeable." Drake hesitated, then stepped aside, gesturing to a cramped parlour cluttered with drafting tools and half-finished maps. A single lamp cast a feeble glow, illuminating a table strewn with parchments, rulers, and a chipped teacup. The air smelled of turpentine and old paper, a testament to Drake's solitary labours. Poirot's eyes swept the room, noting a fireplace where embers smouldered and a wastebasket overflowing with crumpled sheets. "You work diligently, Monsieur Drake," he remarked, settling into a worn armchair. "Your dedication to cartography rivals that of the late Monsieur Cresswell, n'est-ce pas?" Drake's jaw tightened, and he remained standing, his hands shoved into his pockets. Bartholomew had the world handed to him. Patrons, prestige, the Royal Geographical Society eating out of his hand. I've had to scrape for every commission. But I'm no murderer. Poirot's gaze was steady, almost hypnotic. "And yet, you visited his manor the night he died. The milkman, a most reliable observer, saw you leaving after 11 o'clock. You spoke of a collaboration. But Monsieur Cresswell, he was not amenable, was he?" Drake's eyes flickered, and he crossed to the table, busying himself with a compass as if to steady his nerves. "I told you, I proposed a joint atlas, charts of the South Seas, based on new explorer logs. Bartholomew had access to manuscripts I could only dream of. I thought we could share the glory. He laughed in my face, called my work amateurish. I left in a huff. But he was alive when I walked out that door. Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin. A huff, you say? A strong emotion, Monsieur Drake. Strong enough, perhaps, to cloud the judgment? To reach for a dagger in a moment of rage? Drake's hand froze on the compass, his knuckles whitening. You're twisting my words, Poirot. I'm no killer. I've spent years building my name, despite Bartholomew's shadow. Why would I throw that away? Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the wastebasket. With a gloved hand, he retrieved a crumpled sheet of the parchment, smoothing it out to reveal a map of the same Pacific islands found on Cresswell's desk. The lines were clumsy, the proportions off, and annotations in Drake's hand marked coastal features in a hasty scrawl. "This map," Poirot said, holding it up, "it is not the work of a master. It is a forgery, perhaps, an attempt to pass off inferior work as Cresswell's own." Drake's face drained of colour, and he snatched the parchment from Poirot's hand. "That's nothing. A draft, a practice piece. I was experimenting with new techniques. You can't prove anything." Poirot's smile was serene, but his eyes were sharp as flint. "Proof, Monsieur Drake, is a matter of time and observation. This map, it bears your handwriting, and yet it mimics the style of Monsieur Cresswell's work. Did you hope to present it to a patron, perhaps? To claim a commission meant for him?" Drake crumpled the map again, tossing it into the fire, where it curled and blackened. "You're fishing, Poirot. I didn't need to steal Bartholomew's work. I have my own clients, my own projects." Poirot watched the flames consume the parchment, his expression unchanged. "And yet, the fire, it cannot burn away the truth. Tell me, Monsieur Drake, did you ever handle the globe in Monsieur Cresswell's study? A magnificent piece, was it not?" Drake's eyes darted to the side, a fleeting betrayal of unease. "I saw it, of course. Everyone did. Bartholomew loved to show it off, like a trophy. But I didn't touch it. Why would I?" Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was clearly turning over new possibilities. "Very well. We shall speak again, I think. The truth, it is like a map. It reveals itself layer by layer." As he turned to leave, Poirot paused by a small bookshelf, his gaze catching on a volume of Pacific exploration narratives, its spine creased from frequent use. "You study the South Seas, Monsieur Drake. A coincidence, perhaps, that Monsieur Cresswell's final map was of those same waters." Drake's voice was tight. "It's a popular subject. Explorers are charting new routes every year. I'm not the only one interested." Poirot inclined his head, his expression inscrutable. "Of course. But interest, Monsieur Drake, can become obsession. And obsession, it can lead to desperate acts." Stepping into the damp air outside, Poirot adjusted, his hat, his thoughts racing. The crumpled map, the late-night visit, Drake's defensive posture, all pointed to a man with secrets. But were they the secrets of a murderer? The cottage door closed behind him with a thud, and as Poirot walked back toward the village, the first drops of rain began to fall, mirroring the gathering storm in his mind. The rivalry between Drake and Cresswell was a tangled thread, and Poirot knew that unraveling it would require not just evidence, but insight into the heart of ambition itself. Chapter 5. The client's motive. The rain had begun to fall in earnest, as Hercule Poirot made his way to the townhouse of Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt, a residence that stood in stark contrast to the modest clutter of Lionel Drake's cottage. Situated on the outskirts of St. Aldwyn's, the house was a vision of restrained grandeur, its Palladian facade gleaming even under the sullen sky. Ivy clung to the stonework, and the windows, framed in crisp white, reflected the flickering light of gas lamps within. Poirot, ever fastidious, raised his umbrella to shield his immaculate suit from the drizzle, his patent leather shoes navigating the gravel path with care. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and fading roses, a melancholy backdrop to the task at hand. Mrs. Harcourt received him in a drawing-room adorned with the trappings of wealth. A crystal chandelier cast prismatic glints across silk wallpaper, and a marble fireplace glowed with a well-tended fire. She sat on a velvet chaise, her black silk gown a study in mourning elegance, though her posture, erect and composed, suggested a woman more accustomed to command than grief. Her blue eyes, sharp and assessing, met Poirot's with a coolness that bordered on defiance. A silver tea service stood on a low table, its steam curling in the air, and she gestured for him to sit, her gloved hand steady as she poured a cup. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice smooth as polished stone, "I expected your visit. You are, I understand, a man who leaves no stone unturned. Tea?" Poirot inclined his head, accepting the cup with a courteous nod. "Merci, madame. Your hospitality is most appreciated. I come to discuss Monsieur Cresswell, a man whose work was vital to you. Was it not?" Mrs. Harcourt's lips curved in a faint smile, though her eyes remained guarded. "Vital, perhaps, but not indispensable. Bartholomew was mapping my late husband's estates, properties in Cornwall, Yorkshire, and the West Indies. His skill was unparalleled, but his delays were maddening. I needed those maps to finalize the sale of certain holdings, and he kept postponing, citing complexities. It was vexing." Poirot sipped his tea, his gaze never leaving her face. "Vexing, madame? A strong word. And what were these complexities? Did Monsieur Cresswell perhaps uncover something in his work, something that caused you concern?" Her hand paused, the teacup hovering near her lips, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. "You are direct, Monsieur Poirot," she said, setting the cup down with a delicate clink. "Bartholomew mentioned discrepancies in the estate boundaries, minor errors in old surveys. He was correcting them, or so he claimed. I saw no cause for alarm, only for impatience." Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of his skepticism. "Discrepancies, madame, can be more than mere errors. They can reveal secrets, secrets of ownership, perhaps, or of value. Your husband's estates, they are vast, oui, and valuable. Did Monsieur Cresswell hint at anything unexpected?" Mrs. Harcourt's expression hardened, though her voice remained even. "My husband's affairs were complex, as you might expect of a man of his stature. But I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, my only interest was in accurate maps. I had no reason to wish Bartholomew harm." Poirot set his cup down, his movements precise. "And yet, madame, you visited the manor 2 days before his death. A heated discussion, I am told, was overheard by the housekeeper. You were displeased, perhaps?" Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned back, folding her hands in her lap. "Mrs. Langley has a vivid imagination. I pressed Bartholomew for progress, yes. I may have raised my voice. But that is hardly a crime." Poirot's gaze drifted to a mahogany bureau in the corner, its surface adorned with a vase of hothouse lilies. A silk shawl, artfully draped, partially concealed a locked drawer, its keyhole glinting in the firelight. "Madame," he said softly, "you are a woman of means, of influence, yet you guard your privacy with care. That drawer, for instance, what does it contain? Documents, perhaps, related to the estates?" Her hand tightened on her handkerchief, a fleeting betrayal of unease. "You overstep, Monsieur Poirot. My personal effects are no concern of yours. I'm a widow, managing a legacy. I have nothing to hide." Poirot smiled, a serene curve of his lips. "To hide, madame, is human. To reveal, that is the work of Hercule Poirot. Tell me, did you ever see the globe in Monsieur Cresswell's study? A magnificent piece, was it not?" Mrs. Harcourt's gaze flickered, as though recalling the image. "It was striking, yes. Bartholomew was proud of it, always pointing out its details. I paid it little mind. My concern was the maps, not his decor." Poirot nodded, rising from his chair. "Very well, madame. I thank you for your time, but I advise you to remain in St. Aldwyn's. The truth, it has a way of emerging, like a river finding its course." As he moved towards the door, his eyes lingered on the bureau, the shawl's edge slightly askew. He paused, as if struck by a thought. "One last question, madame. Did Monsieur Cresswell ever mention a map of the Pacific Islands? A project, perhaps, of special significance?" Her face remained impassive, but her fingers tightened briefly on the arm of the chaise. "He mentioned many projects. The Pacific, yes, but only in passing. I had no interest in it." Poirot bowed, his expression unreadable. "Merci, madame. We shall speak again, I think." Outside, the rain had softened to a mist, cloaking the village in a silver haze. Poirot raised his umbrella, his mind turning over the interview. Mrs. Harcourt's composure was a fortress, but he had glimpsed its cracks, the hesitation in her voice, the guarded glance toward the bureau. She was a woman of secrets, and secrets, Poirot knew, were the currency of murder. As he walked back toward the manor, the patter of rain on his umbrella seemed to echo the rhythm of his thoughts, each drop a clue in the unfolding mystery of Bartholomew Cresswell's death. Chapter 6. The Servant's Tale. The rain had ceased, leaving the air of St. Aldwyn's sharp with the scent of wet stone and sodden leaves. Hercule Poirot, his umbrella now folded, made his way back to Bartholomew Cresswell's manor, where the late afternoon light cast long shadows across the gravel drive. The manor, with its ivy-clad walls and tall chimneys, loomed like a silent witness to the tragedy within. Poirot's mission was clear: to question Thomas Reed, the young servant whose discovery of the body had set this investigation in motion. The boy's nervous demeanor during their earlier encounter had piqued Poirot's curiosity, and he sensed that beneath Reed's trembling exterior lay a thread of truth waiting to be unraveled. Inside the manor, the kitchen was a hive of subdued activity. Mrs. Langley, the housekeeper, bustled about, her apron dusted with flour, as she prepared a tray of tea for the constables still combing the grounds. The air was warm, with the aroma of baking bread, a stark contrast to the grim purpose of Poirot's visit. Thomas Reed stood at a long oak table, polishing a silver candlestick with a rag, his movements mechanical, his eyes darting toward the door as Poirot entered. The boy's livery was neat, but slightly crumpled, and his freckled face bore the pallor of sleepless nights. His boots, Poirot noted, still carried faint traces of mud, though they had been hastily cleaned. "Monsieur Reed," Poirot began, his voice gentle but firm, "a moment of your time, if you please. We must speak of the morning you found your master. Reed's hands faltered, the candlestick clattering softly against the table. I've told you all I know, sir, he said, his voice high and strained. I went to the study at dawn, like always, to light the fire. There he was, Mr. Cresswell, dead, with that dagger in him. The globe all smashed. I didn't touch nothing, just ran for Mrs. Langley. Poirot settled into a chair, his small frame radiating quiet authority. Oui, you have said this, Monsieur Reed. But the truth, it is like a map. It requires careful study to reveal its contours. Let us retrace your steps. You entered the study at dawn, you say. Was the door locked? Reed's eyes widened as though the question caught him off guard. No, sir. It was ajar, just a bit. I thought maybe the master had left it so, working late as he did. Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of interest. Ajar, you say? Most interesting. And the French windows, did you notice their state? Were they open, closed, latched? Reed swallowed, his fingers twisting the rag. Closed, sir. Latched, I think. I didn't check close-like. I was too shaken, seeing the master like that. Poirot leaned forward, his grey eyes piercing. And yet, Monsieur Reed, your boots tell a different story. The mud upon them, it matches the soil of the garden path, leading to those very windows. Were you perhaps outside the study before dawn? A walk, perhaps, as you mentioned before? The boy's face flushed crimson, and he dropped the rag, his hands trembling. I told you, sir. I take walks sometimes. The house gets close, and I like the air. But I wasn't near the study, not then. Poirot's voice softened, almost coaxing. Come, Monsieur Reed, you are young, and fear makes the tongue stumble. But the truth, it is better spoken than hidden. What did you see, or do, that night? Reed's gaze darted to Mrs. Langley, who had paused her work to watch, her expression a mix of concern and suspicion. I didn't do nothing wrong, sir, he insisted, his voice cracking. I swear it on my mother's grave. I sometimes went to the study at night, to tidy up. Mr. Cresswell worked late, and he'd leave papers everywhere. I'd straighten things, that's all. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the faint quiver in Reed's voice. To tidy, you say? A commendable duty. And what did you touch in the study, Monsieur Reed? The desk? The maps? The globe, perhaps? Reed shook his head vehemently. Not the globe, sir. Never that. It was Mr. Cresswell's pride. Said it was worth more than the house itself. I'd dust round it, careful-like, but I never laid a hand on it. Poirot rose, pacing slowly to the table where Reed stood. He picked up the candlestick, examining its polished surface, noting a faint smudge of varnish on its base. This varnish, he said, holding it up, it is the same as that used on Monsieur Cresswell's maps. You were in the study often, oui? Perhaps you saw something, a visitor, a letter, a map, that struck you as unusual. Reed's shoulders slumped, and he ran a hand through his sandy hair. I saw Mr. Drake once, a week back, arguing with the master. They were shouting about some map, something about islands. I didn't hear much, just cleared out quick. And Mrs. Harcourt, she came by too, day before last. She was cross, said the master was taking too long with her maps. But that's all, sir, I swear. Poirot's gaze softened, though his mind was clearly racing. And the night of the murder, Monsieur Reed. You were in the garden, perhaps, near the study's windows. You saw nothing, heard nothing. Reed's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head. I was in my room, sir. I didn't go near the study till morning. You've got to believe me." Mrs. Langley, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, her hands on her hips. "Thomas is a good lad, Monsieur Poirot," she said firmly. "A bit flighty, maybe, but no killer. He's been with us 2 years. Never a trouble till now." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Merci, Madame Langley. Your loyalty to Monsieur Reed is noted, but loyalty, it must not blind us to the truth." He turned back to Reed, his voice gentle but insistent. "If you remember anything, however small, you will tell me, oui? The smallest detail can be the key to a great mystery." Reed nodded, his face a picture of misery. Poirot stepped toward the door, pausing to glance at a row of hooks where the servants' coats hung. One, a worn jacket, bore a faint smear of varnish on its sleeve, matching the candlestick's smudge. "Curieux," he murmured, filing the observation away. As he left the kitchen, the manor's halls echoed with the quiet tread of his shoes. Outside, the sky was clearing, the last wisps of cloud parting to reveal a pale sun. Poirot's thoughts, however, were far from clear. Thomas Reed's fear was genuine, but was it the fear of guilt or of discovery? The varnish, the mud, the boy's evasions, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Poirot knew that only by fitting them together would he uncover the truth behind the servant's tale. Chapter 7. The Hidden Map. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow through the tall windows of Bartholomew Cresswell's manor, softening the stark edges of the study where Hercule Poirot now stood. The room, though still marked by the tragedy of its owner's death, seemed to hum with secrets, its maps and instruments silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot had enlisted the aid of his old friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, whose arrival from London had brought a familiar, if slightly bumbling, presence to the investigation. Hastings, with his earnest face and military bearing, stood by the desk, his eyes wide with curiosity as he surveyed the scene. "Poirot, old chap," Hastings said, adjusting his tie. "This place gives me the shivers. All these maps, staring down, like they know something we don't." "Where do we even start?" Poirot's moustache curved in a faint smile, his grey eyes gleaming with purpose. "Mon ami, we start with the unseen. The study of Monsieur Cresswell is a treasure trove, but its riches are hidden. We must look beyond the surface, behind, beneath, within. The truth, it lies in what is not immediately apparent." He moved to the bookshelf, its shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound volumes and rolled parchments. His gloved fingers traced the spines, pausing at the gap he had noticed earlier, where dust outlined the absence of a book or journal. "Hastings," he said, his voice low, "help me examine this shelf. There is something here, I think, that wishes to remain concealed." Hastings, eager to be of use, began pulling books from the shelf, his movements careful but enthusiastic. "What are we looking for exactly? A secret compartment? A hidden letter?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps, mon ami. Or perhaps something more, a key to the mystery itself. Monsieur Cresswell was a man of order, yet his death is chaos. The answer lies in what he guarded most closely." As Hastings removed a heavy tome on Polynesian navigation, a faint click echoed in the quiet room. A section of the shelf shifted, revealing a narrow panel that sprang open with a soft creak. Behind it lay a small iron box, its surface etched with a simple geometrican pattern. Poirot's breath caught, and he reached for the box, lifting it with reverence. "Voilà," he murmured, "the hidden heart of the study." Hastings peered over his shoulder, his excitement palpable. Good Lord, Poirot. A secret safe. What's in it? Gold? Jewels? Poirot produced the brass key he had found beneath the blotting pad, its surface gleaming in the sunlight. Let us find out, Hastings. He inserted the key, and with a satisfying click, the lock yielded. Inside was a single item, a folded map, its parchment crisp and unblemished, unlike the hurried sketch on Cresswell's desk. Poirot unfolded it carefully, revealing a detailed chart of the same Pacific islands. But this one was adorned with strange symbols, circles, crosses, and lines forming a cryptic pattern along the coastlines. Hastings frowned, squinting at the map. It's the same islands as the one on the desk, isn't it? But these markings, what are they? Some kind of code? Poirot's fingers traced the symbols, his mind racing. A cipher, perhaps, or coordinates disguised as decoration. This map, Hastings, is no ordinary chart. It holds a secret, one that Monsieur Cresswell valued enough to hide. But what? A treasure? A discovery? Or something more dangerous? He compared the hidden map to the one on the desk, noting subtle differences. The desk map was rough, its lines uneven, as though drawn in haste or copied poorly. The hidden map, however, was a work of art, its contours precise, its annotations meticulous. This, Poirot said, holding up the hidden map, is the original. The other, I suspect, is a copy, perhaps a forgery, made by another hand. Hastings' eyes widened. You think someone was trying to steal Cresswell's work? Drake, maybe. He's a cartographer, after all, and you saw that crumpled map in his cottage. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. It is possible, mon ami. But we must also consider Madame Harcourt, whose estates may hold secrets this map could reveal, or young Reed, who knows more than he admits. This map, it is the key to the murder, I am certain. He turned his attention to the box itself, examining its interior for further clues. A faint scratch on the inner lid caught his eye, and he peered closer, noting a series of numbers etched in a fine hand. 174209. Another cipher, perhaps, he murmured, or a reference to something yet to be found. Hastings, growing impatient, gestured to the globe fragments in their crate. What about the globe, Poirot? You keep saying it's important. Could this map have been hidden inside it? Poirot's gaze shifted to the crate, his mind piecing together the puzzle. An excellent thought, Hastings. The globe was shattered with purpose, to distract or to conceal. But if this map was hidden in the shelf, what then was the globe protecting? Or was its destruction meant to draw our attention away from this very discovery? He knelt by the crate, sifting through the fragments once more. His fingers paused on a piece depicting the Pacific, where a faint outline of the same islands appeared, though without the cryptic symbols. These islands, he said, they haunt this case. Monsieur Cresswell was obsessed with them, and someone else, I think, shared that obsession. Hastings rubbed his chin, his brow furrowed. It's all so dashed complicated, Poirot. Maps, ciphers, secret boxes. How does it all fit with a dagger in Cresswell's back? Poirot rose, dusting his gloves with a handkerchief. The dagger, Hastings, is the point of the compass, marking the center of the crime. But the map, the globe, the secrets, they are the lines radiating outward. We must follow them to their source. He folded the hidden map carefully, tucking it into his pocket. Come, mon ami. We must speak with Mrs. Langley again, and perhaps the gardener. They may know of visitors of habits that will shed light on this map's significance. As they left the study, the manor's halls seemed to close around them, their shadows lengthening in the fading light. Poirot's thoughts were a whirl of possibilities, each clue a coordinate on the map of murder he was determined to chart. The hidden map, with its cryptic symbols, was a beacon, guiding him closer to the truth, but also deeper into a web of ambition, deceit, and danger. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. The drawing room of Bartholomew Cresswell's manor glowed with the soft flicker of gas lamps, their light casting intricate shadows across the polished mahogany and heavy velvet drapes. The air was thick with tension, a palpable undercurrent that seemed to hum beneath the surface of the gathered assembly. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating an almost theatrical authority, stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. Before him, arranged on a long table, lay the fragments of the shattered globe, their jagged edges glinting like accusations, and beside them, the hidden map, its cryptic symbols stark against the parchment's creamy hue. The suspects, Lionel Drake, Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt, and Thomas Reed, sat in a semicircle, their faces a study in unease, each betraying a different shade of apprehension. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his honest face creased with anticipation, while Inspector Japp hovered near the door, his notebook at the ready, his expression a mix of skepticism and trust in Poirot's methods. The room was silent, save for the faint crackle of the fire and the distant patter of rain against the windows, a reminder of the storm that had passed but left its mark on St. Aldwyn's. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his Belgian accent lending a measured cadence to his words, "we are gathered to unravel the mystery of Monsieur Bartholomew Cresswell's death. A man of maps, of precision, was struck down in his study, and with him a globe of great beauty was destroyed. But this crime, it is not one of a passion alone. It is a crime of calculation, of secrets hidden in lines and symbols. Tonight I, Hercule Poirot, will reveal the truth." Lionel Drake shifted in his chair, his angular face pale, his ink-stained fingers gripping the armrests. Mrs. Harcourt sat erect, her black silk gown a shield of composure, though her blue eyes flickered with guarded intensity. Thomas Reed, hunched and nervous, twisted his hands in his lap, his freckled cheeks flushed with the strain of scrutiny. Poirot gestured to the table, his gloved hand sweeping over the globe fragments. This globe, it was no mere decoration. It was a masterpiece, a symbol of Monsieur Cresswell's genius. To shatter it was to strike at his very essence. But why? To conceal a truth, or to proclaim it? The answer lies in what was hidden within this room. He lifted the hidden map, its parchment rustling softly. This map, found in a secret compartment, is the key. It charts a chain of Pacific islands, marked with symbols that are not mere decoration, but a cipher. Monsieur Cresswell guarded this map with care, for it held a secret worth killing for. But whose secret was it? Drake's voice broke the silence, sharp and defensive. "You're spinning tales, Poirot. That map means nothing to me. I've my own work, my own charts." Poirot's eyes locked onto Drake's, his gaze unyielding. "Do you, Monsieur Drake, or did you covet the work of another? Let us consider the facts. You visited Monsieur Cresswell the night he died, proposing a collaboration he scorned. Your rivalry was no secret. His success eclipsed your own, and you resented it. But there is more. In your cottage, I found a crumpled map, a poor imitation of this one, bearing your handwriting. A forgery, perhaps, meant to pass as Cresswell's work. Drake's face drained of colour, and he leapt to his feet, his voice rising. "That's preposterous. I told you. It was a draft. Nothing more. You can't prove I forged anything." Poirot raised a hand, his calm unshaken. "Patience, Monsieur Drake. The proof. It is in the details. The map in your cottage wasn't merely a draft. It was an attempt to replicate this hidden map, to claim its value for yourself. But Monsieur Cresswell discovered your deceit, did he not? He confronted you, mocked your amateurish work, and you, in a moment of fury, struck him down." Mrs. Harcourt's gasp cut through the room, her hand rising to her throat. "Monsieur Poirot, you cannot mean to accuse Mr. Drake without evidence. This is mere conjecture." Poirot turned to her, his expression serene, but piercing. "Madame Harcourt, your concern is noted. But let us not be hasty. You, too, had reason to fear Monsieur Cresswell's discoveries. His maps of your estates revealed discrepancies, perhaps secrets of your late husband's dealings that you wished to keep buried. Did you not visit him, pressing for haste, fearing what he might uncover?" Her lips tightened, but her voice remained steady. "I sought only accuracy, Monsieur Poirot. My husband's estates are complex, and I needed those maps for their sale. I had no cause to harm Bartholomew." Poirot nodded, as if conceding the point, then turned to Reed, who shrank under his gaze. "And you, Monsieur Reed, the loyal servant who found the body. Your boots, they bore mud from the garden path, and your jacket, a trace of varnish from the study. You were there, perhaps, before dawn, tidying as you claim, or observing something you dare not speak." Reed's voice trembled, his eyes wide with panic. "I told you, sir. I didn't do nothing. I tidied sometimes, yes, but I didn't see nothing that night." Poirot stepped closer to the table, lifting a fragment of the globe, its surface marked with a faint smudge of red ink. "This smudge," he said, holding it aloft, "it matches the ink on the hidden map. And the map, it was concealed not in the globe, but in a secret compartment. The globe's destruction, mes amis, was a ruse, a distraction to draw our eyes from the true prize, this map. But who would stage such a scene?" He turned to Drake, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Monsieur Drake, you are a cartographer, skilled in the art of deception. You forged a map, hoping to claim a commission meant for Cresswell. When he discovered your plan, you could not bear the humiliation. You stabbed him with the dagger on his desk, then smashed the globe to suggest a robbery gone wrong. But you made a mistake. You left the forged map in your cottage, and its handwriting betrays you." Drake's hands clenched into fists, his voice hoarse. "You're mad, Poirot. I didn't kill him. Yes, I tried to copy his style. I needed the work, but I didn't stab him." Poirot's eyes gleamed, unrelenting. "Then explain, monsieur, why the red ink on the globe matches the ink in your cottage. You handled it, did you not, in your haste to retrieve your forgery?" Drake collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. I touched the globe that night, yes, to study it. I thought it might hold clues to his latest project. But I didn't break it. I left him alive." Japp stepped forward, his expression grim. "That's enough for me, Poirot. It's thin, but it's enough to hold him. What do you say?" Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Not yet, Inspector. The confession, it is near, but we must be certain. Monsieur Drake, you will remain here. The truth, it will not hide for long." As the suspects exchanged uneasy glances, Poirot's mind was a whirl of certainty and doubt. The map, the globe, the ink, they pointed to Drake, but something in the man's desperation rang true. Was he the killer, or merely a pawn in a larger scheme? The confrontation had laid bare the threads of motive, but the final knot remained untied. Chapter 9. The Confession. The drawing-room of Bartholomew Cresswell's manor seemed to contract under the weight of the moment, its air thick with the residue of accusations and half-spoken truths. The gas lamps flickered, casting wavering shadows that danced across the faces of the assembled suspects: Lionel Drake, Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt, and Thomas Reed. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small, dapper figure a beacon of calm amid the storm of emotions. The hidden map and the fragments of the shattered globe lay on the table before him, silent witnesses to the drama unfolding. Captain Hastings, by the fireplace, watched with bated breath, while Inspector Japp, his notebook clutched tightly, leaned forward, ready to act on Poirot's next revelation. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as a falcon's, fixed on Lionel Drake, whose ashen face betrayed a man teetering on the edge of collapse. The cartographer's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white, his breath uneven. The accusation of murder hung over him like a guillotine, and the room seemed to wait for his response. "Monsieur Drake," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant, "you have denied the act of murder, yet the evidence, it speaks against you. The forged map in your cottage, the red ink on the globe matching that in your possession, your presence at the manor on the night of the crime. These are not mere coincidences. They are the lines of a map leading to your guilt. Speak now, monsieur, and tell us the truth." Drake's eyes darted wildly, seeking escape, but finding none in the faces around him. Mrs. Harcourt's cool gaze held a trace of pity, while Reed's nervous twitching suggested he feared being drawn into the net. Finally, Drake's shoulders slumped, and he buried his face in his hands, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to kill him," he whispered, the words barely audible. "It wasn't planned. I lost control." A murmur rippled through the room, and Japp stepped forward, his face grim. "Go on, Drake. Let's have the whole story." Drake lifted his head, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice trembling but resolute. "I went to Bartholomew that night to plead for a chance, a collaboration, a share of his next commission. I'd been working on a map, a copy of his Pacific chart, to prove I could match his skill. I thought if I could show him something close to his work, he'd take me seriously. But he saw through it at once. He laughed, called it a child's scribble, said he'd expose me to the Royal Geographical Society as a fraud." Poirot nodded, his expression unchanging. "And this humiliation, it was too much, oui? You saw the dagger on his desk, and in a moment of rage, you struck." Drake's voice cracked, a sob escaping. "It wasn't like that. I was angry, yes, but I only meant to scare him. I grabbed the dagger, waved it at him, shouting that he couldn't ruin me. He lunged at me, trying to take it, and it happened so fast. The blade went in, and he fell. I didn't mean to kill him, I swear." Hastings gasped, his hand tightening on the fireplace mantel. "Good heavens, Poirot! He's admitting it!" Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. "Continue, Monsieur Drake. What of the globe? Why did you destroy it?" Drake's hands trembled as he spoke. "I panicked. I thought if it looked like a robbery, no one would suspect me. The globe was there. So grand, so much his pride. I smashed it with a paperweight, to make it seem like someone broke in, looking for something. I didn't know about the hidden map, I swear. I just wanted to cover my tracks." Mrs. Harcourt's voice cut through, sharp and incredulous. "You fool, Lionel. You thought breaking a globe would hide a murder. You've ruined yourself." Drake's head snapped toward her, his eyes flashing. "Don't lecture me, Evelyn. You were hounding him too, weren't you? Those maps of yours. Don't pretend you didn't have secrets to keep." Poirot's gaze shifted to Mrs. Harcourt, whose composure faltered for a moment, her lips tightening. "Madame," he said, "we will address your secrets in due time. For now, Monsieur Drake, you claim the murder was an accident, a moment of passion. Yet the forged map suggests premeditation. Did you not plan to steal Monsieur Cresswell's work, to profit from his reputation?" Drake shook his head vehemently. "I wanted to work with him, not steal from him. The map was a test, a way to prove myself. I never meant for any of this." Japp stepped forward, producing a pair of handcuffs. "That's enough, Drake. You've said your piece. You're coming with us." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Un moment, Inspector. The confession, it is compelling, but there is a detail that troubles me. The red ink on the globe. It matches that in Monsieur Drake's cottage, yet he claims he did not know of the hidden map. If he smashed the globe to stage a robbery, why the ink? It suggests a deeper connection, one he has not yet explained." Drake's eyes widened, his voice desperate. "I told you. I touched the globe that night, looking at it. Maybe I got ink on it. Then, I don't know. I'm telling you the truth." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his relentless pursuit of clarity. "Perhaps, Monsieur Drake, but the truth, it is like a map. It must be complete to guide us. We will verify your story, and the ink. It will speak for itself." As Japp led Drake away, the room fell silent, the weight of the confession settling like dust. Mrs. Harcourt rose, her movements deliberate, and excused herself, her face a mask of relief and unease. Reed, still trembling, slipped out after her, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. Hastings approached, his voice low. "Well, Poirot, you've done it again. Drake's as good as convicted. But that ink business. Do you think he's holding something back?" Poirot's gaze lingered on the table, where the hidden map lay like a silent oracle. "Mon ami, the confession is a step, but not the destination. Monsieur Drake's story fits the facts, yet there is a shadow of doubt. The map, the globe, the ink, they tell a story of their own, and I must ensure it aligns with his words." Outside, the rain had stopped, and the manor stood bathed in the soft glow of the twilight. Poirot's mind, however, was far from rest, turning over the confession like a cartographer charting uncharted seas, seeking the final coordinate that would reveal the whole truth. Chapter 10. The Aftermath. The manor of Bartholomew Cresswell stood hushed in the gathering dusk, its windows reflecting the last embers of an October sunset. The air within was heavy with the residue of Lionel Drake's confession, a confession that had shaken the household, yet left an undercurrent of unease as though the truth had not fully settled. Hercule Poirot, his small figure a study in quiet intensity, lingered in the study where the crime had occurred. The shattered globe's fragments, now carefully catalogued by Inspector Japp's men, rested in their crate, and the hidden map, with its cryptic symbols, lay folded on the desk. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood nearby, his face a mixture of relief and lingering doubt. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, rubbing his hands together as if to dispel the chill of the room, "you've got your man. Drake's confession seals it, doesn't it? A moment of rage, a botched cover-up with the globe. Case closed, I'd say. Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey eyes fixed on a single shard of the globe, its surface depicting a sliver of the Pacific. Mon ami, the confession is a map, but not the destination. Monsieur Drake has admitted to the act, yet there are lines in this mystery that do not yet connect. The ink, the map, the motive, they form a pattern. But is it complete? I think not. Hastings frowned, his brow creasing. What more is there, Poirot? He admitted stabbing Cresswell, smashing the globe to fake a robbery. What's left to question? Poirot turned, his movements deliberate, and picked up the hidden map, unfolding it with care. This map, Hastings, it holds a secret that Monsieur Drake claims not to know. Yet the red ink on the globe, matching that in his cottage, suggests he touched more than he admits. We must verify. We must be certain. The truth, it is like a compass. It points true only when all points align. As Hastings pondered this, a soft knock interrupted, and Mrs. Evelyn Harcourt entered, her black silk gown whispering against the floor. Her face, though composed, bore a trace of vulnerability, her blue eyes searching Poirot's with an intensity that belied her earlier detachment. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "I owe you thanks. Your accusation of Mr. Drake has spared me further scrutiny, but I must speak plainly. The maps Bartholomew was preparing for me, they contained sensitive information. I feared he might expose matters best left private." Poirot inclined his head, his expression courteous but probing. "Madame Harcourt, you speak of secrets, oui? The discrepancies in your husband's estates, perhaps? Matters of ownership, or perhaps of value, that you wished to conceal?" Her lips parted, a faint flush colouring her cheeks. "You are perceptive, monsieur. My husband, Sir Reginald, had dealings, investments, partnerships, that were not entirely above board. Bartholomew's maps in charting the estates uncovered boundaries that hinted at these arrangements. I urged him to complete the work quickly, to avoid questions. I feared exposure, but I did not harm him. Your resolution of this case, it protects my reputation." Poirot's eyes softened, though his mind remained sharp. "Madame, the truth is a protector, but only when it is whole. Your secrets, they are safe for now, but I advise honesty in the future. Concealment, it invites suspicion." She nodded, her gloved hands clasped tightly. "I understand. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot." With a graceful turn, she left the room, her departure as measured as her arrival. Moments later, Thomas Reed appeared, summoned by Poirot's request. The young servant's freckled face was pale, his eyes darting nervously as he stood in the doorway, twisting his cap in his hands. "You wanted me, sir?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oui, Monsieur Reed," Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit, if you please. The case is resolved, yet there is a matter to clarify. Your presence in the study, your boots with their mud, the varnish on your jacket. These suggested you knew more than you told. Speak now, freely. The truth. It is your shield." Reed sank into the chair, his shoulders hunching. I was scared, sir. I did tidy the study sometimes at night, like I said, but I took things. Small things, quills, a bit of ink, once a compass. I sold 'em in the village, to make a bit extra. I didn't mean no harm, but when I found the master dead, I thought you'd think I did it." Poirot's gaze was steady, almost paternal. "Petty theft, monsieur. Reed is a small crime compared to murder, but it is a crime nonetheless. The varnish on your jacket, it came from handling Monsieur Cresswell's tools. Oui. Reed nodded, tears brimming. Yes, sir. I was careful, but I must have got some on me. I didn't touch the globe, I swear, nor the dagger. Poirot rose, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. You have confessed your fault, and for that you are forgiven. But let this be a lesson, the path of honesty. It is always the safest. Go now, and sin no more. As Reed fled, his relief palpable, Hastings shook his head. Poor lad, caught up in all this. But you've tied it all up, Poirot. Drake's the killer, Harcourt's secrets are safe, and Reed's just a frightened boy. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Tied, perhaps, but not knotted. The case, it is close to resolution, but I must examine the ink, the map, one final time. The little grey cells, they whisper of a detail yet to be clarified. He moved to the desk, his fingers brushing the hidden map, its symbols a silent challenge. The aftermath of the confession had brought clarity, but Poirot knew that the final truth, like the finest line on a map, required one last stroke to be complete. Chapter 11. The map's secret, the study of Bartholomew Cresswell, now stripped of its earlier chaos, seemed almost serene in the soft glow of a single gas lamp. The desk, cleared of its clutter by Inspector Japp's diligent constables, bore only the hidden map, its parchment spread open like an ancient manuscript awaiting decipherment. Hercule Poirot stood alone with Captain Hastings, the silence between them heavy with the weight of a case nearly resolved, yet still shadowed by a lingering question. Outside, the night had settled over St. Aldwyn's, the village hushed under a canopy of stars, the air cool and crisp with the promise of frost. Hastings, leaning against the desk, adjusted his tie, his face a mixture of admiration and impatience. Well, Poirot, you've got Drake in cuffs, Harcourt's secrets laid bare, and young Reed's confessed to his pilfering. What's left? The case is done, isn't it? Poirot's grey eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with that familiar sign of restless thought. Mon ami, a case isn't done until every line of the map is clear. Monsieur Drake's confession, it explains the murder, the dagger, the shattered globe. But this map, he tapped the parchment gently, it holds a secret that does not yet fit. Its symbols, its purpose, they whisper of something greater than a mere rivalry. He unfolded the map fully, its intricate lines tracing a chain of Pacific islands, their shores marked with cryptic symbols, circles bisected by lines, crosses joined by arcs, a pattern that seemed both deliberate and obscure. Poirot's gloved finger traced a sequence of coordinates, 12 degrees south, 165 degrees east, the same numbers scrawled on Cresswell's desk map and etched faintly in the hidden box. These coordinates, he said, his voice low, they point to a specific place. But what lies there? A discovery, perhaps, that Monsieur Cresswell valued above all else. Hastings peered over his shoulder, his brow furrowed. A treasure, do you think? Like those tales of pirate gold in the South Seas? Cresswell was a cartographer, not an adventurer, but I suppose he could have stumbled on something. Poirot's smile was faint, almost wistful. A treasure, oui, but not necessarily of gold. Knowledge, Hastings, can be a treasure worth more than jewels. This map, it is no ordinary chart. Its symbols suggest a code, perhaps pointing to a shipwreck, a lost expedition, or a claim to land unknown to others. Monsieur Cresswell, he was charting something extraordinary, and someone, perhaps Monsieur Drake, perhaps another, knew its value. He moved to the crate of globe fragments, sifting through them with care. His fingers paused on a piece depicting the same Pacific region, its surface unmarred by the cryptic symbols, but bearing a faint indentation, as though something had been pressed against it. "Curious," he murmured. "This globe, it wasn't merely a decoration. It was a canvas, a record. But of what?" Hastings, growing restless, gestured to the map. "If it's a shipwreck, Poirot, why all the fuss? Drake killed Cresswell over a forged map, not this one. You said so yourself. The forgery was his attempt to steal a commission." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Oui, but the forgery. It was inspired by this map. Monsieur Drake saw its potential, perhaps overheard Cresswell speak of its significance, but the true map, this one, was hidden. Why? Because it held a secret that could ruin or enrich. I suspect it points to a wreck, a ship lost in the Pacific, carrying cargo of great value, or perhaps documents that could alter claims to land or wealth." He turned to a bookshelf, retrieving a volume on Pacific exploration that he had noted earlier. Flipping through its pages, he paused at a passage describing a merchant vessel, the Aurora, lost in 1872 near the coordinates marked on the map. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing to the text. "The Aurora carried gold and colonial records, lost in a storm. Its location was never found, but rumors placed it near these islands. Monsieur Cresswell, with his access to rare charts, may have pinpointed it." Hastings' eyes widened. "Good Lord, Poirot! You mean this map is a treasure map, and Cresswell was killed to keep it secret?" Poirot's gaze was distant, his mind tracing invisible lines. "Or to steal it. Monsieur Drake, he coveted Cresswell's success. But did he know of this wreck? The forged map suggests he tried to replicate it, but the hidden map, it was beyond his reach. And yet, the globe's destruction. Why? To hide the map's existence, or to ensure its secret died with Cresswell?" He paced the room, his small frame filled with restless energy. "The symbols, Hastings, they are a code, but incomplete. Without the key, we cannot unlock their meaning. Monsieur Cresswell knew it, and he died for it. The map is unfinished, its secret locked away, perhaps forever." Hastings sighed, running a hand through his hair. "A pity, then. All this for a secret no one can claim. Drake's in custody, and the map's no use without Cresswell's knowledge." Poirot's eyes twinkled, a spark of determination. "Not no use, mon ami. The map, it is a testament to Monsieur Cresswell's genius and to justice. The secret may be lost, but the crime is solved. And that, it is enough for Hercule Poirot." As they stood in the quiet study, the map seemed to glow in the lamplight, its symbols a silent challenge to the unknown. Poirot folded it carefully, his thoughts turning to the final steps of the case, the last threads to be tied before the map of murder was complete. Chapter 12. The Departure. The platform at St. Aldwyn's modest railway station was bathed in the pale light of a late October morning, the air crisp with the scent of frost and coal smoke. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, stood beside Captain Hastings, their breath visible in the cool air as they awaited the London-bound train. The village, with its quaint cottages and winding lanes, seemed to recede into a quiet tableau, as though relieved to shed the shadow of murder that had darkened its days. Poirot's patent leather shoes gleamed, his hat tilted at a precise angle, and his moustache, immaculately groomed, betrayed no hint of the restless mind beneath. Hastings, clutching a small valise, shifted his weight, his face bright with the satisfaction of a case resolved. "Well, Poirot," he said, his voice hearty. "Another puzzle solved, eh? Drake's in custody, the map's secret is safe, and St. Aldwyn's can sleep easy again. You've outdone yourself, as usual." Poirot's grey eyes flickered with a trace of melancholy, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the village faded into mist. "Mon ami, the puzzle is solved, oui, but not without cost. Monsieur Cresswell's genius, it is lost to the world, and his map, it remains a mystery. The little grey cells, they triumph, but they mourn the secrets that die with a man." Hastings frowned, puzzled by Poirot's sombre tone. "But you got the killer, Poirot. Drake admitted it, stabbed Cresswell in a fit of rage, smashed the globe to cover it up. What's left to mourn?" Poirot turned, his expression serene, yet tinged with introspection. "The truth, Hastings, is a map of many layers. We have charted the crime, oui, but the map itself, the hidden map with its symbols, it points to a treasure we cannot claim. The Aurora, lost in the Pacific, its gold and secrets buried beneath the waves. Monsieur Cresswell knew its location, and with his death, that knowledge is gone. It is a reminder, mon ami, that even in victory, there is loss." That all. Distant whistle of the train broke the silence, its plume of steam rising like a spectre against the grey sky. Poirot adjusted his gloves, his movements precise, as though aligning his thoughts with the order he so cherished. "Monsieur Drake," he continued, "he sought to steal a reputation, not a treasure. His forgery was a desperate act, born of envy, not greed. The globe, its destruction, was his panic, not his plan. And yet, the red ink, the symbols, they hint at a larger story, one we may never fully read." Hastings nodded, though his face suggested he was content to let the matter rest. "Still, you caught him, Poirot. That's what counts. Justice for Cresswell, and a warning to anyone else thinking of crossing the line." Poirot's smile was faint, almost wistful. "Justice, oui. It is the compass that guides us. But the world, Hastings, it is a globe of mysteries, each one a challenge to the order we seek. We chart one at a time, and in doing so, we bring light to the shadows." The train pulled into the station, its wheels screeching softly against the rails. Porters bustled about, and passengers began to board, their voices a low hum against the clatter of luggage. Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the carriage, settling into a compartment upholstered in faded green velvet. As the train lurched forward, Poirot gazed out the window, watching St. Aldwyn's vanish into the mist, its secrets now sealed in the aftermath of the case. Hastings leaned back, crossing his arms. "What's next, Poirot? Back to London for a bit of rest, or is there another mystery waiting to snag you?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, a spark of anticipation breaking through his reflective mood. "Rest, mon ami. Perhaps for a moment. But the world, it doesn't rest. There will always be another map to chart, another truth to uncover. For Hercule Poirot, the journey never ends." As the train gathered speed, carrying them toward the smoke and clamour of London, the manor, the map, and the shattered globe faded into memory, a chapter closed but never forgotten in the ceaseless cartography of Poirot's mind.